Okay, so my name is Nikki. I'm the Director of Training at Get Outdoors PA with PRPS. Thank you for joining us for our summer camp roundtable. We have a great amount of people on the call, so what we typically do is we will mute everyone, and then if you want to speak up, we ask that you unmute yourself. Of course, if you want to share video, you do not have to. If you want to change the name of your little image or your square, there's 3 dots next to your name. You can choose to rename yourself so we know who you are on the call. Some have a phone number, some have, mine, for example, said PRPS training, so I changed it to my name. That's completely up to you. If you're just hopping on, please put your name and email address in the chat box so we can make sure you get the full recording. And chat box discussion within a few days of our call. The first big thing I want to address with everyone is PRPS, both yesterday and today, sent what we're calling reopening guidelines. The first thing I want to say is that these are not rules dictating when and how to open. Are basically suggested guidance or recommendation on how PRPS is interpreting the guidance that we are getting from the state. It's open to interpretation. From our discussions with DOH, from what we've seen, and as we all know, it's ever changing. It could all change after this call. It could be changing right now. We were notified yesterday of some things we needed to change, which is why it came out today, and it will be updated as needed. So please know that this is not telling you what to do, it's just some recommendations and some guidance that we are seeing. It's one of the things, for example, on summer camp, clear. There is no specific guidance on summer camp yet. There is guidance on childcare. It does not specify outdoor recreation as far as summer camp or recreation programming. So it makes it difficult for us to actually say, yes, we can go in the yellow phase. Yes, we can go in the green phase. So that's something we're trying to clarify. The webinar that was canceled with DOH when we were speaking with him last week, he specifically stated that they are waiting for the CDC guidelines to be released. And even as of this morning, I have the ACA, the American Camping Association website open. The CDC guidelines have not been released on summer camp. It says they are to be released by mid-May. So we do keep checking these things multiple times a day. So we're hopeful that once that information comes down, that we'll be able to clarify that. But I don't want anyone to worry that we are dictating what your individual departments or municipalities should do. And speaking to DOH, for example, on swimming pools, the gentleman said that they would be there for answering questions and to provide guidance. They, at the time, were not planning on providing specific protocols. So we're just trying to do the best we can to answer any kind of questions. And of course, questions we're trying to answer the best we can, but as you all know, a lot of the information is gray. So if you have concerns, please let us know. We'll do the best we can to answer that. Okay. So one of the first things that has been a hot topic, I know, on our calls, of course, is whether or not people are running their camps. So I'm going to ask Dan to launch this poll for me. I'm hoping he's listening because the Zoom gave him control over our polling. So Dan, if you can go ahead and launch that poll, it's going to ask basically, are you running your camp, or what is the status of your camp at this point in time? If anyone wants to speak up at this time on whether or not you've made that decision, why that decision has been made, or if you've made adjustments to your program, please go ahead and unmute yourself. If you do not feel like speaking up, you can add it to the chat box and we will try to keep up with that discussion as well.
Hi, this is Jessica Foley from Abington Parks and Recreation, and we have canceled all of our summer camps and programs for this summer.
And was that based, what, are you still in the red area?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
This is Mary from Willistown Township, and my summer camp manager, we subcontract to summer camps. They are coming up with virtual camps that will be run by Zoom, and so that the kids will get to know the instructor and limit the amount of kids. And so we're just lining up, being prepared that we're not going to, but we're in the hands of the school district. And so there's that part too.
Hi, this is Heather Digay from Lancaster Rec in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We've just learned that our school district will not allow us to use their buildings this summer, so those 2 camps that we typically have in school district buildings are canceled. We still have 2 other locations we could have camps, but we're waiting to decide on those right now.
This is Audrey from Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. Anything we had inside the school facilities have been canceled or moved outside for later in the summer for right now, which is really basketball camp. We're going to try holding it outside our new courts if we're able to the beginning of August. And our day camp right now has not been canceled. We're waiting for more guidelines to find out if we should officially cancel it or postpone it and only have a certain amount of weeks.
Hey, this is Darlene from North Fayette Township in Oakdale, Pennsylvania. We plan on having our camps outside. We're trying to do the 25 or less. We separate our kids anyway like that. So as of right now, my board of supervisors wants us to go ahead and plan like we are having it. We just can't go into my community center. So there's the problem that we have, that if it does rain, but we're trying to do 25 or less, and to try, as of now, we're going to try and have camp.
Can I ask you a quick question, follow-up, please?
Sure.
Okay. So how are you going to kind of keep them at a reasonable distance, and you're going to use a porta potty and you're going to sanitize every in and out? Because the thing that happens is one kid gets sick, then everybody's got to be in quarantine, and then the township's on the hook, of course.
Well, your first question to answer, we don't have porta pots. We actually have bathrooms that we can use, and we will designate a person to clean them every time someone goes in. Like, that's going to be part of their job. We're still learning of how we're going to separate them and things like that. Matter of fact, I have a meeting after this with my my supervisors for the camp, so we're not 100% sure how to do that. Like, we have so many different questions. We're just waiting for the guidelines to come out. And there might be a shot that, you know what, this just isn't feasible to do it. But as of now, we're trying to plan that we're going to have it.
Okay. And
that we're going to cancel it.
okay, one more follow-up. Thanks, everybody. Have you spoken with your insurance carrier and gotten any feedback from them? And has anybody else?
We're actually talking to our solicitor to get to the legality of it first, and then we'll go through our insurance company. But for right now, we have questions into our solicitor.
Hi, this is Jane Kunkel from East Hanover Township. We are located in Dauphin County, which is one of the counties that is fighting the actual state guidelines and trying to open early. At the beginning of this month, the Parks and Rec Board made an official recommendation to cancel camp this year, trying to make a list of pros and cons. Our township manager did, and myself actually contacted our insurance carrier, and ultimately it came up with anything that can be found negligent to what the governor is saying, we wouldn't be covered by them. They wouldn't defend us in court. Which that's such a broad interpretation, you know, of what they'd find negligible, you know, and On top of that, with the how many unknowns, we definitely have the impression, I mean, they won't say don't hold camp, but they're definitely stating that with all the unknowns, how are we to cover every aspect of it to hold it safety-wise?
This is Lindsay Taylor from Northern Lehigh Recreation. I'm waiting to hear from our insurance carrier and solicitor. We wanted to try to do something if at all possible, even if we had to have an outside program because we will not have access to the schools. Our concern also is the daily sanitation because we do not own or maintain or manage any of the sites we're on. So we have to involve the borough and the townships, and neither of them have the resources or inclination at this time to get into daily sanitation of the bathrooms or going near the playground equipment. So that really hampers us. So I'm basically leaving it in the hands of insurance and our solicitor. I certainly don't want us negligent for anything with my staff going forward. So it looks like we probably will not have camp either.
I should note, though, that ultimately is still the supervisor's decision, which we have a board meeting with them next Tuesday. So I actually still have an answer whether we are still to be holding camp or not. But I technically have 40 children already registered, which definitely exceeds yellow already. And I'm also concerned with the sanitation, too.
This is Karen Hegedus from Lower Providence Township. We just got word yesterday from our Board of Supervisors and managers, and we have decided to cancel our 7-week summer camp program that we use in the schools due to the liability, the sanitation, the policies and procedures that would need to be put in place, and things a little overwhelming for some of our staff and stuff. So they decided to, per their direction, that we've decided to cancel the 7-week program. We are possibly looking into like 1-week sports camps, art camps, things like that, looking at numbers, whatever the guidelines come out, if you can have, 10 kids, 20 kids, things like that. But pretty much everything is canceled up until our next decision is going to have to be our July 4th event with fireworks, and it's one of our largest events. And if those numbers do not lay up, then that would have to be canceled then also. So
One quick question for follow-up for you, if I could. Are you in school district buildings, or what?
Yes, yeah, we have, we partner with our school district to hold our camps, and we have a preschool, state certified preschool camp that we run out of our pavilion in our township building.
Just so you know, the poll results that came through here, 59% were no decision has been made, 8% have already canceled, 17% have canceled portions, 14% are planning to run in-person camp with modification, and 2% are trying virtual camp only.
Great, thank you, Dan. We had a lot of responses in the chat box as well. I think reading through them quickly, because I know we have other great topics to talk about. I don't know if I want to call them great topics, but it looks like there's a big response of people either canceling or looking to modify them to outdoor only camps. So a couple of questions that came to transferring them to outdoor only is, one, what are you doing in inclement weather? And I know a lot of you have run outdoor only camps, but also when it comes to facilities like playgrounds, and I know someone has already said, when the sites are not your own, Lindsay, you said, I believe, when it's the borough or the township who are managing maintenance of those facilities, how do you maintain those safety protocols? So does anyone have any thoughts on, one, inclement weather, what outdoor facilities are you using, and how are you maintaining those safety protocols? As we know, playgrounds, even in the yellow phase, are still closed. So if we are able to run summer camps in yellow phase, how do you keep kids off of playground? I think it's near impossible, but two, how are we maintaining those safety protocols and sanitation? So any thoughts?
This is Nancy from Northampton Township. As I understand it, we're not going to be able to run camps in yellow. That's unless you have a child care certification. That's my understanding. As far as the numbers of camps, once we move into green, and I have to give this credit to my program manager, Jen, who has been attending the American Camping Association webinars and different other organizations. I believe they also run an emergency preparedness program. And they talk about pods, and it's the protocol nationwide is going to be 50. However, Pennsylvania's ruling is 25. So if you have a facility where you can accommodate 25 kids in 4 different areas and provide them with different entrances and exits, and not have those 25, well, it's not 25, it's 25 in a group. So you have, say, 22 campers and 3 staff. You move them so the groups don't ever meet, so to speak. They can be in a distance. So if you have a large camp program, say it's 70 children in the camp, or 60, whatever the math is, you can have a large event, but they have to social distance at that point. They can stay in their pod or group or whatever you're going to call that, but the groups have to be separated. However, that may conflict with the recommendations of bringing any visitors into the camps. You cannot have visitors into the program like special entertainers, and you really need to try to limit and I think keep parents out of the facility. Campers will not have to wear masks, however, staff will. So if that's any information that helps, I'm just communicating what my program manager heard, but that's through the American Camping Association.
That does help, Nancy, because the mask question was one of the ones that I was going to bring up because it's in the chat box, and that's great information to share. Thank you.
That's how I understand it. You know, of course, when we know and we can confirm everything, I certainly will share that. Again, we're all in this. You know, there's so much confusion, and it's just very difficult. If we're up to my boss, we'd be running camp as is. I mean, there's a lot of opinions. They feel we're safe here because the numbers of COVID-19 have really been hit in the nursing homes. However, one of my staff members, his father, was just diagnosed. So, and he hasn't been out really. So this is a very difficult situation. And as of yesterday, I would have canceled everything. But knowing the opinions of my superiors, we are looking to modify. We've canceled 2 programs, very large programs with teenagers, and then the preschool programs we've canceled. We're looking to the half day, and we're also looking to a program for all day, pretty much running it like a child care. Good luck, everyone.
Any other thoughts on that?
Sorry, can I ask a question about the like how the zones or the phases for Pennsylvania line up to the phases for the U.S. national opening? Because we've also been sitting in on a number of the American Camp Association workshops, and as far as the confusion is kind of where we are nationally versus in Pennsylvania. So there's 3 national phases. There's 1, 2, and 3, and I had kind of assumed that 1 lined up to red, 2 lined up to yellow, and 3 lined up to green. But at the American Camp Association meeting last week, a lot of people were saying we're currently in phase 0, which would then throw us kind of out of alignment. And like, I know other states have 6 phases, some states have 5 phases. We're really just trying to, we've been looking at a lot of the American Camp Association. We're considering still going with camp within the yellow if it's possible, given our insurance and our supervisors, but to cut our total camp size down to 25. We're outdoor, although we do have a space that we can use for shelter and space, and then splitting our kids into 2 pods of 10. And so we'd have 20 kids total, and then our staff on for the day, so we'd be 24 per day. And we're gonna have to split our camp in half and only offer Group A camp on Monday, Wednesday, Group B camp on Tuesday, Thursday. But we're really waiting for the CDC to come out with those guidelines because everything seems to conflict. The American Camping Association advice, the national advice, Pennsylvania's advice it doesn't really seem to align. And that's what we're really struggling with.
From what I understand, speaking with the gentleman from DOH, they are waiting for the CDC guidelines on summer camp. So as I mentioned at the start of the call, what we released as PRPS is our best interpretation at this time, which is based on the state, which we all know is very vague when it comes to, well, it's not even vague. There's no information on summer camp recreation-based programs. So what we're hoping is that when the CDC guidelines come out, DOH and the governor's office will provide that recommendation or that guidance on summer camp programs. So at this time, we used our best recommendation, and it's open to interpretation at this point in time. It's hard because we know some of the departments do have licensed childcare facilities where they can run summer camps, and then others cannot. I will also say that, you know, Parks and Rec have been fighting the fight to separate our preschool programs from certified childcare, and then now we want to be in with childcare. So it is a very gray area and it's very complicated, but I think until the CDC guidelines actually come out, there is no real solid yes or no decision that we can provide or make a recommendation to.
Nikki, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
So this is Tyler from the Township of Upper St. Clair. We were just wondering, you know, I was following with my supervisor, and we were looking at the guidelines that PRPS put out today, and we noticed one of the big changes there was the summer camp, you know, being open in the yellow. And I know, you know, in your explanation, I really appreciate all the work, by the way, that PRPS has done to get a lot of that info out to us, because we do look to that. But I was wondering, I mean, I think you brought up a great point just now with that contradiction of, well, we're not childcare. Oh, some of our facilities, I should say, are not childcare, and we've been fighting that fight. We don't want people to see us as a childcare entity, but now it sounds like it would be convenient for us to link ourselves to the childcare designation for the purpose of being able to just operate in the yellow. Is there any more clarification of where PRPS kind of felt adding that to the yellow was, you know, appropriate, or I guess that's not even the right word, just where they've gotten that source from?
You mean as far as where that change from yesterday to today came? Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
So we had some people, we had a lot of feedback on the grid that went out yesterday. So we tried to review it a little better, and there's no yet. Again, it's all open to interpretation. There was multiple staff looking at this. And when you look at it, if it's an outdoor program and I'm trying to figure out the best way to answer this. It's our best interpretation that if it's an outdoor program and you're sticking within the restrictions of what is recommended as far as social distancing and sanitation, we think that an outdoor summer camp program should be permitted. And we're hopeful that that will be what happens when the CDC guidelines come out. Now, again, that can change. It's going to be decided per municipality and per department. We have a disclaimer at the top of those guidelines letting people know that these are, you know, based on what we believe. They are not set in stone. They can change as soon as guidelines come out. I see Christy did just share. I don't know, Christy, can you speak up? Is that the official guidelines?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to look on their website right now to see
Okay.
when and where that's posted.
Okay, because I looked last night, I didn't see them, but they said they come out any day.
So that CDC guideline was leaked to the Associated Press. So you can actually find it on the Associated Press's website, not on the CDC.
Okay.
So it's not official.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So now we have an unofficial guide which I saw that there were some leaked, but I never saw the full version of it. Like I saw some of the thoughts behind it, but I didn't want to share them in case it wasn't official. But if everyone, we will share that link obviously in the chat box. But Tyler, I don't know if I answered your question completely. Again, I would take it with a grain of salt. Everything's going to change when the CDC guidelines are issued.
And Nikki, I will add, I will stress it's an interpretation of what we see coming down the pike. And the way that CDC, they published some draft guidelines earlier about summer camps. And it's how we're looking at them. And, you know, the governor's plan is widespread, but it's not deep yet. So there's a lot of room for interpretation.
Hey, Nikki,
I can add to that, though. I think there's got to be this is Pete from Cranberry Township. I think there has to be an abundance of caution in sharing information, because we are at the whim of our elected officials and managers, and everybody is so eager to get information. When somebody like PRPS posts it, now we're battling a twofold. Like, what are we supposed to do? Oh, well, PRPS just said you can open camps in yellow. Start prepping for yellow. And then we have to go through all the guidelines and say, and I know we've talked about opening camps in yellow, but has anyone really looked at all the, if we do, some have referenced us as businesses with the requirements of, different requirements of masks, because again, we're not certified, and taking temperatures, requiring social distancing. Yellow is going to be extremely difficult to open up a camp. But I think many of us have heard, since that report came out this morning, prep up. You know, we're trying to open up camps in yellow because PRPS just said we could. So I think there's got to be a lot of caution. I know you guys say that it has to be based on interpretation, but remember who we're talking to. We're not talking to people who base things on interpretation. They're saying, "Oh, you just got the guidelines." So I would just caution when we post something like that. It makes it for the people in the, you know, with their feet on the ground here, making it kind of difficult with us. We're kind of prepped for in green. All right, summer camp could be happening, but our world got kind of spun around today. The other thing I would suggest is a separate mailing list where you're not mailing elected officials and managers, and I apologize if any of them are on this call right now, but you have two different people serving two different groups, and we're answering too many. I don't know if that would even be a possibility.
I appreciate that feedback, and I will pass that on, Pete, but I would say that there are some municipalities that they are the same people providing that service. In some of our more rural areas, the elected officials are actually the people who are managing parks and facilities, which I think is why we include them. Whether or not we can pull those specific areas out or not, we can talk about that. But I will definitely provide that feedback. I think that's why we did from yesterday today add that disclaimer up top. But maybe we can word it a little bit more specific, like warning, this is not guidelines, it's guidance or recommendations. It's not telling you what to do. So I will definitely pass that on, and I appreciate that feedback. I definitely do. So thank you. But if we want to, if there's any more thoughts on that, if you want to put them in the chat box, I don't want that to deter from the roundtable itself. So are there any other questions that we want to talk about regarding summer camps if they open, things that we need to address? I know some of the protocols obviously we're waiting for, but in the past we've talked about the sanitation protocol, temperatures, have other people talk to either solicitors or their insurance companies. I know that was a question asked earlier, but not a lot of people spoke up. So is that something that we want to continue in the discussion?
The one thing I wanted to kind of ask is, if anyone out there has talked to their insurance companies or insurance providers, and they have recommended not doing camps or that they won't protect the municipality, can you share who your insurance provider is, whether it's Perma or Divot or whoever else?
I have another question too, in addition to that, which is an excellent question. I mean, has PRPS or NRPA, has anybody been told in the industry leadership when CDC is going to have something to say about all this?
The CDC, it says essentially, and I was on the ACA page this morning, says by mid-May. So that's the only information I've seen is mid-May. So everyone is waiting eagerly to get this information. Derek, that's a great question. Before it's too late, I don't know.
And as a follow-up, Nikki, I mean, as a follow-up, then what kind of detail? I mean, has all the questions that we came up with for the PA DOH, I mean, does the CDC, I mean, what kind of detail? Are we going to get this, this really loosey-goosey scene that we're getting from our governor?
Well, and here's the thing. So part of the reason that the DOH webinar was canceled is because one of the things we found out was that they were looking to essentially, for aquatics specifically, not provide a protocol, more provide guidance. They were going to answer our question, but then they found out that a lot of our people were looking more for a solid protocol. And we provided them with basically an example protocol. And we plan to have a meeting and or discussion with DOH and DCNR to develop that protocol. So what we're hoping is that perhaps when CDC releases the summer camp guidelines, that perhaps we can do something similar with that.
And you're saying work with the DOH and with CDC, DOH and and DCNR to come up with a protocol for the state. Is that right?
Yeah,
yeah,
Thursday night, most of you probably got the email from me Thursday night if you were signed up for the DOH webinar saying it was canceled. I was having a call with our CEO and the gentleman from DOH about trying to still have the webinar to answer some questions, but we couldn't. It had to be canceled. But in those same discussions were when the CDC guidelines come out, if we can have another discussion before rescheduling the webinar. Sure, the information was correct and moving forward.
Yeah, just kind of going with that. I think guidelines are great, but if we're kind of left to interpret everything, we can get jammed up pretty easily by interpreting it the wrong way. If the government doesn't like how we did it, or if a parent doesn't like how we did it, or vice versa, whatever. The protocol would really be the only way to go, I feel like.
That's what we're hoping. It's whether or not they're willing to put together the protocol, or if we provide them again with an example like we did for aquatics.
I think several of you have hit the nail on the head. Is everybody's sort of waiting on the CDC to provide guidance, and that goes for DOH and DCNR. I would describe it as a little hesitant to put out their own guidance until they see what CDC has to say regarding specifically camps and things like that. So it makes it hard. And right now we're dealing with, like you said, Pete, yeah, it looks like camps may be permitted under yellow, but there's a whole list of precautions and things that you have to work through. And then you're still kind of out there. So it just makes it hard for you guys, and we understand that.
And Dan, I think to your point, and to Pete's point largely, is we can't really go off of interpretations and things that aren't protocols, because we do have, elected officials and people in place that, you know, we have to answer to them and in our policy making. So I think, you know, in our end, the longer this drags out without these protocols, it leads us more to a decision to cancel. I mean, we haven't officially made a call either way, but I think the more these things get dragged out, you know, I think of Nebraska. I originally, I started with a Y career in Nebraska, and we start camp this week in Nebraska. So, you know, I think we happen to start our summers in June, you know, largely in the camp sphere, but let's not forget there's states that are moving along and they start camp in May. So what, you know, and they haven't gotten these guidances from the CDC either. So, you know, with due respect there, I think I'm not counting on getting really good guidelines for this summer. I hope we do, but I'm not counting on it.
I just want to respond. Dan Russell, you had asked about the insurance company. I'm not sure if you saw the response in the chat box, but Jane Kunkel mentioned they use Penn Prime Insurance Pool.
Yeah, I did see that.
Okay,
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure. And then a couple questions in the chat box. What is considered an outdoor camp? Stacey runs a day camp that can be moved outside, but they have a plan for inclement weather. If they have to move inside for inclement weather, would that cause compromised insurance coverage? That's a good question. And then Doug Knaus, his question was, are any departments dealing with counties pushing to make their own decision about what phase they're in? If anyone's watched the news lately, obviously there's some counties that are making up their own mind with moving from red to yellow. Some are fighting the governor. So those are two questions. If anyone has any feedback on those, or if you have a question and you don't want to answer it out loud, you can feel free to put it in the chat box. We'll try to get those answered. And of course, feel free to unmute yourself and speak up if you choose to do it that way as well.
I think we've never been defined more as an essential service as we are now. As you know, once we hit phase green, everyone's going back to work, and there's a ton of childcare providers who can't handle the load. And as much as the easiest thing to do here would be to cancel summer camps, I don't think we're ever going to be more needed than we are this summer when people go back to work. And I do think we have several counties in Western Pennsylvania that are doing their own thing. And a lot of people are asking us for guidance instead of CDC, since we are the professionals. So if you can put a plan together yourself, get that, you know, run it past your solicitor, but with a plan that, you know, has you opening up in the green and providing childcare. I mean, I've already had Octel, which is the office that does all the certification, asking us to open up as a childcare center over the summer. And, you know, it's a question whether you want to do it as a certified program or not, because the requirements are pretty stringent for a camp. But the need is there. And if we all close, that's going to say a lot, I think, about our field.
Well said, Pete. A great question in the chat box from Joanne. How do we keep kids separated for group games, or do we not play games? I got a great email from Josh about, I'm trying to find it. It was right here, social distancing games. Josh Green had sent out an email soliciting ideas for social distancing games for a book or a guide that will be distributed, I believe. Josh, if you want to mention anything about that.
Sure.
There you are.
I'll put my email address in the chat box, but if you have any social distancing games that you want to add, we're trying to put together a guide. Dover Township and Silver Spring Township have already done a great job to get the ball rolling, and I've had a few submissions already. So we're going to try and put it all together in one place and then share it out with whoever is interested. So whenever you share, just remember to, we're going to try and organize it by age group if possible. So kind of think about what age group would be appeal for in the chat. Thanks.
Is it? Oh, hopefully everyone can hear me. My internet just went a little awry, but Josh, you sent me a couple PDFs with that email. Can I share it with the group?
Sure you can, but we're going to include that in the final version anyway, so we
Okay.
can just wait till it's all put together. Might be
Awesome.
easier.
Great. What other questions do we have for the group?
I should state, by the way, with the pen prime, that was a verbal conversation. I feel like they're hesitant to put out anything. The only thing that they said they're definitely doing is developing and following the CDC. So again, that they couldn't give a clear picture for camp. I just wanted to mention that because I had another Pen Prime member privately message me here. So to answer anybody else's questions with that, that wasn't a written confirmation about the negligence. It was verbal saying, you know, we went through scenarios, basically walked through verbal scenarios of what could happen and what they felt they might or might not cover. So
okay,
clear that up. I have nothing official.
Great. Ashley mentioned in the chat box her camp often plays games outside like pickup sports game, races, and obstacle course. They use nearby playground equipment. They enjoy outside craft projects and trail walks. And she's worried about keeping kids occupied each day. So I think that activity booklet will be fantastic for everyone involved. I know one question that's come up in the past is anyone continuing to use vendors for their camp? People have used sports or dance instructors through like NAES and stuff like that. So is anyone continuing with those? Have they been canceled? Are you doing online registration with them? How about any of those programs? Are you still kind of holding off like you are your traditional summer camp?
This is Christy from Silver Spring. We are we're still unsure about our program. Most likely we're going to cancel, but we have pretty much canceled all guest speakers and any kind of activities that we would have planned where someone from the outside would have come in. And that was based on some of the guidelines and recommendations that the ACA discussed last week during their webinar. So we kind of just took that and we threw that into our health and disaster plan just to basically prevent any outside groups. Because even parents, we were limiting, you know, trying to make recommendations on if parents were going to be dropping off their kid, we prefer that the same parent be dropping off, picking up, just to limit the exposure to the kids.
Have anyone considered drive-by pickup and drop-off if your facility allows it, so parents don't have to get out of the car? They can just do basically drive-up service to drop off kids and then pick them up with ID.
Yeah, we're thinking about that. It's Bethune State College, and we're doing probably a playground program this summer, most likely, instead of our normal day camp, just because we're tied to the schools, and so we don't have an indoor facility. But saying that, in the parks, we're thinking that if we can figure out the best place for drop-off, then parents can just sort of drop off, and we'll have a list and make sure we check ID, et cetera, if we need to. And then same with Christy, if going along the lines of trying to ask if the same parent can drop and pick up. But if it's drive-through, then it wouldn't be as necessary. But we're looking at that as well.
It's Barb from Northampton Township. We are still in the red right now, so we're not even close to being able to open, but we have plans on if we can open. But yes, that's what our plans are as far as dropping off. And if we have, you know, certain sections, those kids would go to those sections with their assigned person and, you know, drop off and you know, pick up.
And how about, I know one of on the Google Doc had talked about great kits that people can send home with craft ideas and stuff like that, but are many people thinking about sending a list? I know I don't have kids, but I have nephews, and usually before the school year, they get a list of stuff that they should have for the school year. Are you thinking about doing a list of items that they can bring to camp with them for craft projects, for sports projects? So basically they'd have their own camp pack that they would bring that would help, you know, not eliminate, but kind of lessen the chance of shared use equipment. Are you thinking about that, or are you thinking just sanitizing stuff after each use?
We are, instead of cutting half of our campers out, because we had 50 kids registered for camp, we're looking at cutting the group in half and doing alternating days. So it's not 5 days. And we'll be letting parents know, though, if we can move back to 5 days, we would. But we are looking at sending home activities for those days off of camp. So we're kind of trying to sell it as you get 2 days at camp with us of activities, and then 2 days at home. Here's some things to take home. And then we're also really investigating the possibility of building a UV sanitizing box for all of our craft supplies, and our public works is working on that. So if anybody else has any information about UV sanitizing boxes, I would love to chat with them. If you want to just message me, that would be great.
That's an interesting idea. I would love to read that too. I do see one question in the chat box for people doing drive-by pickup and drop-off. Is there any software that you're using, or are you doing old-fashioned clipboard for that?
I think we were planning on clipboard, old-fashioned.
Not iPads or anything like that.
I know Camp Brain can do check-in and check-out on an iPad.
Do you know what system they use by chance?
Camp Brain's their own registration system. Like it's their
sorry.
whatever they can. Yeah, so it's a great program if anyone has used it before. It's pretty awesome. It can do a lot for you.
Fantastic. I'm just trying to check the chat box to see if there's other questions. While I'm checking the chat box, are there any other questions? We have about 10 minutes left. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff. We still, obviously we all have questions, but we're waiting on additional guidance.
Hi, this is Pat from Mount Lebanon Recreation. When we were talking about limiting exposure to the kids, like to a number of people, how about volunteers? Because a lot of times we relied on freshmen and sophomores in high school who not only wanted to help out, but they would get credit for volunteer hours that they needed for school. And, you know, there were a lot of them in and out. So do you not use volunteers and, you know, hire more staff just to have more continuity with the same group of people, same group of kids? Part two of that, a lot of our camps are held weekly. People may want to consider making it longer, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. If you have a 6-week camp, maybe you just do 2 3-week sessions as opposed to weekly. We did weekly in the past because of vacations. We'd always get, hey, I can only do 2 out of those 3 weeks, and can you prorate the fee, and you know, all that sort of thing.
Great, thank you. Is anyone using medical staff at their camp for temperature checks and yeah, that's a great question. Medical staff. No, I'm going to say it's no.
We have an EMT at my camp that sits with us every single day of camp. So he'll be in charge of doing all the temperature checks.
Great. Someone on here, Stacy, has their camp director is a nurse. That's fantastic. Does everyone have a thermometer? I want to know if you were lucky enough to get a thermometer.
Nikki, I'm looking for right now. I saw the ad today online for a forehead thermometer checker for like $70. I'm gonna look into it.
Yeah.
If I find it, I'll send it over.
That would be great. I know I saw that some of the shipping timelines were late. But people got like, oh, it's going to take so long to get it, but then they got it quicker than what was expected. So it all depends. I think they're being safe with what they're saying the shipping will take, but then other people are getting them a little quicker than expected.
Yeah, and even beyond camp, I'm sure we'll be using it for the community center and things like that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And
We'll
if
just
if anyone
off of
has,
Amazon.
oh, sorry. Yeah,
Sorry.
Amazon. If any other people have places where you know you can get them, if you share the link with me, I can send it out to the group in a mass email.
Yeah, our police department actually tested out a bunch of them and then gave us a recommendation, which I can share. And I was able to order 3 of them off of Amazon, and they got here within a week.
Wow,
so I now
that's
have one for staff, our senior programs, if we can reopen in the green, and then with small groups, and then our summer camp.
Great.
This is Sean from North Fayette Township. Is anybody's head spinning right now? Raise your hand if it is. Okay, good. So I'm not the only one.
This is Penn Garvin, and one of my questions is, during this time when so many families have taken such financial hits, how are people dealing with, if you are going to be opening up, how are people dealing with being able to pay the fees, the usual fees? Obviously, we've been talking about things that's going to make it more expensive, not less expensive to run, lack of volunteers, cleaning, etc. And how are people handling that? Thank you.
Jane mentioned they normally hold a sponsorship program through the school.
I do have a question regarding the UV box. Who was speaking about the UV box, and do you have any information that you could pass along regarding that? That is something that would be of an interest to us.
Yeah. So I know a number of people responded. What we're struggling with right now is sourcing the sterilization UV lights, because there's of course different types of UV lights. I can share. There's our current plan is to use a number of medical professionals have put out plans. Lots of people are using them to sterilize masks. So they've put out kind of plans on how to build the box. Right now, the most promising one we're looking at is kind of like a Rubbermaid tote that you line with either aluminum tape or emergency blanket material, something shiny. I know that people said, hey, the light only kills the surfaces it touches. We're looking at, there's people kind of coming out with plans for building racks into the bottom of them, which are much like baking racks, kind of on stilts, that you lay everything in there, you turn on the lights, you can like roll things around. We just feel like it's, in comparison to the idea of trying to keep every kid with their own set of materials and not have them share with each other, just to be able to kind of view our groups as pods. But of course, all of this is dependent on the CDC guidelines. So our public works group is using these ideas to look at building the UV box, and then potentially using it also for our senior activities once those come back online in the green zone. We typically have a senior center. We're not anticipating that'll open until the fall. So we're looking at how we could get like small groups of seniors, socially distanced, doing some stuff. So using it for both those programs, but I can send out the link on that. And then as of this morning, the best source I had seen for finding the UV sanitizing lights was through pet stores, because certain reptiles require UV sanitizing light.
So just for the record, I have seen some cautionary tales about the UV lights that you use, the safety of them, things like that. So I haven't fully researched that, but by any means, but I was going to get one, and I then found information that it can be very, it can actually be very detrimental. So to people's safety. So there's that part.
Yes, the light itself is very damaging to your skin. So that's one of the things we're talking about. That is why we're looking at something that has to be fully closed in order to turn on, that the light, can't escape from. But yeah, that's definitely something our public works crew is going through right now. looking at safety, and CDC guidelines for UV sanitation.
We in Cranberry have built 6, and we're using them now to sanitize face masks. We also have 2 workers' comp issues with eyes, where it has impacted pretty negatively some people's eyes with it. So abundance of caution on that one too. But they are working for us. They also have vehicle UV light systems.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you for that. I just want to mention, if you look in the chat box, Derek Muller did put in that there's a deal ending in 1 hour on thermostats. Or thermometers, sorry. So if you want to copy that link and check those out, there's also some on Amazon, and some people are putting some information on some hand sanitizer or other sanitization products. So that information is in there. Obviously, I'll keep the chat box in the roundtable open a few minutes after we end, but we have a few minutes left. So I know a couple of people had their hand raised. So Crystal, Gina, Joanne, and Paul, you had your hand raised. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and let me know. I want to just reiterate that the document that PRPS sent out this morning, they're not strict rules telling you what to do. They are ever changing and open to interpretation, which I know is a little maybe frustrating to people, but we will be clarifying those, and I will share all the feedback with Tim, and we will try to clarify everything we can. As soon as we see the CDC guidelines come down for summer camp, we will make sure that they are posted on our pandemic resource page. I can shoot it out to everyone on the Roundtable email database that we have. I will also try to get the recording and chat box text out to everyone as soon as possible following today's event, because there was a lot of good information in the chat box today. So I didn't know if there's any last minute questions before we end here. Anything? I know, Dan, thank you. You did, again, there's the CDC guidance on childcare. I think that's their draft maybe, or the leaked version.
It was the leaked draft from about the first of the month.
So if you want, again, we'll keep this open if you want to download that now. If not, I will try to get this chat box text done today. I should be able to get it out before the end of the day, or at least before tomorrow. I'll try to put that as a priority so you all have that in the good links we have. Again, the link to the summer camp Google Doc is in there. There's a lot of good information shared by all of the people on this group. You're the ones doing amazing things and thriving through this horrible situation. So we thank you for what you do. If you haven't put your name and email address in the chat box, please do that so we make sure that we can keep in touch with you. And if there's no last minute questions, thank you so much. We hope you join us. We'll probably do this again in about 10 days, 2 weeks from now. Or if we get the guidance that comes from DOH and we're able to schedule one when that comes out, we have clarification, we'll do that, because we want to be able to help you make decisions and make sure that we can hopefully run summer camps for those who haven't been forced to cancel because of this darn COVID-19. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. The sun is shining here, so if you can get outside, go outside.